We'll get a microphone to you.
Hi, Jeff Laurenti. On page 37 of the report, and Barbara's already alluded to it, the report makes the case that the U.S. has its own economic interests in trying to deal with this problem. One could argue, however, that there are, within that larger private sector interest, specific private sector interests that, in fact, may be partially or substantially contributing. One thinks first of tobacco. The Reagan administration had made breaking open markets for tobacco exports one of its top trade priorities, despite predictions that within 30 years you would have lung cancer and heart disease pandemics, which have happened, just as had been predicted. You have the food processing industry, which has been subject to criticism at home to some degree, and here it's the Europeans as much as us, and they have their equivalent to Coca-Cola and KFC, and arguably pharma, the pharmaceutical companies, all of which have used international trade law and investment law as a battering ram for being able to diffuse their products in poorer countries. To what extent do you all see that piece of the wealthier world's very narrow specific industries selling goods with good advertising budgets as part of the problem? To what extent do you think the World Health Organization should be given the authority to override the general trade liberalization provisions in existing law? We note that page 54 refers to Obama's pushing some exemption in the Trans-Pacific Partnership, but it's WTO and TRIPS that are the big guarantors.
You know, it's interesting, Jeff, I know Jeff, the problem on tobacco is that tobacco in most of these countries is actually owned by their own government. These are not the BATs or the Philip Morris's, et cetera. They're actually owned. You probably even saw yesterday in the New York Times talking about the e-cigarettes in China and the safety issues there. In particular, it's one of the largest single sources of government funding in China is tobacco. That's true actually in most parts of Africa as well. It's true in India. It's true everywhere. And that actually, you know, you don't want to sit there and feel superior. It's been true everywhere and countries have sold them off. It's within the realm of food. There is not a huge amount in most of these countries of food going in that people are targeting, but most of it, maybe Coca-Cola, certainly the distribution, but most of those guys have been very good about sustainability and sourcing locally. So I think it's important to remember that, of course, people do want to sell their products, but most of the products that you're talking about are actually being controlled by the self-same governments, and that raises issues of its own in terms of how you can actually make progress on them when it is indeed a source of funding for those governments.
Is there a hypocrisy sort of question when, you know, we're unleashing weapons of mass obesity? Just made that up. Either Tom's?
So I'll just take the trade question.